It was one of those suffocating summer afternoons where the heat clung to your skin and made the air inside the house feel like it hadn't moved in hours. The sunlight poured in through the windows in hazy streaks, and every fan in the house was spinning at full speed, but it did little to cool the atmosphere. I had just come back home for summer break from university, and for the weekend, it was just me and my dad, Martin. My mom, Karen, had gone out of town to visit her sister for a few days, leaving the two of us alone in the house. At first, it felt kind of nice. Dad and I had always gotten along. He was warm, calm, and had a dry sense of humor that made me laugh even when I didn't feel like it. We hadn't had time alone like this in a while, and part of me was actually looking forward to it. But there was also a strange sense of anticipation I couldn't quite place, like I was waiting for something, even though I didn't know what. We had lunch together, made small talk about school, work, and random things around the house. But by mid-afternoon, I began to notice something a little different. Dad was acting more playful than usual. Not in a creepy way, at least not at first, but just unusually relaxed, joking more, smiling more. It caught me off guard. "You know what we should do?" he asked suddenly. "Watch a movie. Something classic." "Sure," I replied. "Got anything in mind?" He grinned in that sly, teasing way of his. "How about something a little spicy?" I raised an eyebrow. "Spicy like food spicy or?" He laughed. "Romantic spicy. Just for fun." I chuckled, thinking he was just joking. "All right, sure." We ended up picking an old romantic drama, one of those slow burn movies filled with long, lingering stares and lots of emotional tension. At first, I was absorbed in the story, but then I started noticing something. The way Dad kept glancing at me during the steamy scenes. Not outright staring, but definitely looking. And not like a joke anymore. My heart started to beat faster. I told myself I was imagining it, but the awareness didn't go away. I felt every inch of the couch between us, every little movement he made. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the movie, but the tension in the room grew thicker with every passing minute. Then came the knock at the door. Both of us jumped slightly. Dad glanced at me, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he motioned with his hand. "Stay there. Let's just see who it is." I crept over and peeked through the front window. It was only Mrs. Evelyn, our neighbor from across the street, holding a basket in her arms. I felt my shoulders drop with relief. I opened the door. "Hi, sweetie," she greeted cheerfully. "Baked too many cookies again. Thought I'd bring some over." "Oh, thank you," I smiled. "That's so sweet of you." Dad appeared behind me, voice overly cheerful. "Evelyn, you always know just what we need." She chatted with us briefly before heading home, and once she was gone, the air in the house felt different. Again, he sat back on the couch, but I could feel his eyes on me. "Lily," he said, voice softer now. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if it were just us?" I turned to him slowly. "What do you mean?" He paused, searching my face. "I mean if your mom wasn't here. Just you and me." My breath caught. "That's kind of a weird question." "I know," he said quickly. "I know it sounds wrong, but I don't know. I've been feeling things I shouldn't." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run from the room, but another part of me, the part that had noticed his glances, that had felt the strange thrill in the air, froze. Before either of us could say another word, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mom. "Hey, change of plans, heading back early. Be home in a few hours." I showed it to Dad, and his face immediately changed. "We need to just act normal," he said, standing up fast. "Okay." I nodded numbly. The moment was gone. But it had happened. And it was hanging there in the space between us like something unfinished. When Mom walked through the door later that afternoon, smiling and cheerful, everything looked normal. But inside, nothing felt the same. She asked, "So, what did you two do while I was gone?" "Just watched a movie," Dad replied, his voice calm. "Too calm." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, something dramatic." She smiled and moved on, completely unaware of the tension she had just walked into. But I felt it, and I knew he felt it too. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I kept thinking back to that moment. His words, his eyes, my own reaction. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure we could ever go back. The days that followed passed in a strange haze. The kind where everything looked normal on the surface but felt different beneath. The summer heat lingered, pressing against the windows just as heavily as the silence that had settled between my father and me. We didn't talk about what had happened. Not directly. Not at all, really. But it was there. In the way he avoided lingering too long in the same room. In the glances that came too quickly and looked away even faster. In the way I felt my pulse quicken whenever we passed each other in the hallway. It was like walking through a house filled with invisible wires. Every step felt like it could trip something. Mom, thankfully, didn't seem to notice anything was off. She was back to her usual self, chatty, affectionate, busy planning dinners and asking about my classes. And I did my best to play along, to laugh at the right moments and nod when I was supposed to. But it all felt like acting, because deep down, something had shifted, something no one else could see. One night, a few days after Mom returned, we were all sitting together in the living room watching TV. Some sitcom was playing, and the room was filled with easy laughter, at least from her. I was curled up on one end of the couch, and Dad was sitting on the other. At one point, during a lull in conversation, I felt his eyes on me. When I looked over, our gazes met. Just for a second. But it was long enough. My breath caught. There was something in his eyes I couldn't explain, like recognition, like longing, like guilt. I looked away quickly, pretending to be focused on the television. But my heart was racing. That moment hadn't been in my head. It was real. Later that night, after Mom had gone to bed, I wandered back into the living room, hoping the cool air might help clear my mind. To my surprise, Dad was still there, sitting on the couch with a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand, staring into nothing. "Oh," I said, stopping in the doorway. Didn't think anyone was still up. He looked up, slightly startled. "Hey." "Yeah." "Couldn't sleep." I hesitated, then walked over and sat on the chair across from him. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he spoke. "Lily, about the other day." My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said softly. "Me too. I've been thinking about it." He stared at his glass. "It was a mistake. I shouldn't have said anything." "Was it?" I asked before I could stop myself. I mean, it felt different. He looked at me again. Really looked. "It did," he admitted. "Didn't it?" The air in the room shifted, like a storm building beneath calm skies. There were so many things I wanted to say, to ask, but the words tangled in my throat. Then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I jumped slightly and reached for it, thankful and frustrated all at once. It was a message from a friend. "Want to come hang out for a bit?" I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to stay, to see where the conversation with Dad would lead. But another part, the part that still clung to some idea of boundaries, knew I needed space. "I think I'm gonna head out," I said, standing. "Just for a little while." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Okay, be safe." I left the house with my heart pounding, unsure of what I was running from or toward. Later that night, when I returned, I found him still awake, sitting in the same spot, now reading a book. He looked up as I walked in. "How was it?" he asked. "Good," I replied, sitting beside him. "Did you miss me?" I added, half joking. He chuckled softly, but there was a weight in his eyes that said more than his laugh did. "Maybe a little." I smiled, but inside I was spinning. Then came another interruption, a knock at the door. We both turned, startled. Mrs. Evelyn again, cheerful as ever, holding another basket of cookies. "Hope I'm not disturbing," she chirped. Dad stood up, greeting her with forced charm. I watched his eyes flick between her and me, something unspoken lingering there. After she left, I turned to him, heart racing. "What were we talking about before?" He hesitated. "I don't know if we should talk about it." "Why not?" I asked, voice quieter now. "It's already out there." He ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, but whatever we say, it stays between us." "I promise," I said without hesitation. He looked at me carefully. "I feel something between us, Lily. I don't know what it is, but it's there. And I can't ignore it anymore." "I feel it too," I whispered, surprising even myself. He reached for my hand, and the moment our fingers touched, something inside me lit up. It was wrong, complicated, terrifying, but real. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope with no safety net. My dad and I had crossed an invisible line, spoken words that couldn't be unsaid, shared a touch that still tingled in my skin when I thought about it. We never mentioned it directly after that night, but everything had changed. We became experts at pretending. At breakfast, we were just father and daughter again, passing syrup and talking about chores. When Mom was around, we laughed at her stories and complimented her cooking. But behind the smiles, something deeper stirred beneath the surface, something that neither of us could bring ourselves to name. It was maddening. One evening, as I sat in my room scrolling mindlessly through my phone, I heard the sound of laughter drifting from downstairs. I peeked out and saw my parents sitting at the dining table, talking like nothing in the world was out of place. But it didn't feel normal to me. It felt like a scene from a play, well rehearsed, perfectly timed. Then Mom called up to me, "Lily, come down and join us." I hesitated, then forced a smile and walked downstairs. As I joined them at the table, Dad glanced at me. Just a brief glance. But in that split second, I saw it again. That spark, that unspoken understanding that only we shared. We played a board game that evening, something simple and nostalgic. Mom laughed easily, sipping her wine. Dad was animated, more so than usual. Each time our hands brushed reaching for a card or a game piece, I felt a jolt of electricity. He looked at me like he remembered everything we had said, everything we hadn't. That night, after Mom went to bed, I wandered into the living room hoping to clear my head. But there he was, again, on the couch with another glass of whiskey in hand. He looked up. "Couldn't sleep?" I shook my head. "You, same." I sat on the far end of the couch, my legs curled beneath me. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was familiar. Heavy but familiar. "You've been different lately," I said softly. He didn't answer right away. "Then, so have you." We both knew what we meant. "I wish things were simpler," I added, almost to myself. He nodded. "I do too. But the truth is, I can't stop thinking about that night. What we said. What we felt." I swallowed hard. "Me neither." He set his glass down and leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on mine. "Do you ever wonder what would happen if we didn't stop?" I couldn't answer. My heart was pounding too loudly. The idea was terrifying, but also intoxicating. Just then my phone buzzed. I grabbed it quickly, half grateful for the interruption. "Be there in 10. Couldn't wait any longer. "Aunt Claire." I read it again, confused. Aunt Claire? She was supposed to stay the weekend with Mom. Hours away. Why was she coming back? I showed the text to Dad. His face went pale. "Why is she coming now?" "I don't know." There was a knock at the door. We both stood, frozen. Then, through the glass panel, we saw her, Aunt Claire, dragging a suitcase, smiling brightly as if nothing could be wrong. "Surprise," she called through the door. "I couldn't wait to see you guys." Dad muttered, "This can't be happening," under his breath. We opened the door and let her in. She hugged both of us and launched into a cheerful rant about how the weather ruined her plans, how she missed Mom, and how she decided to come early. All I could think was, we are trapped. She moved through the house like she owned it, dropping off her bags in the guest room, chatting about her job, her cat, her new skincare routine. Dad and I tried to keep our faces neutral, tried not to look at each other for too long. But the energy between us hadn't disappeared. It was just buried now, smothered under Aunt Claire's loud stories and cheerful voice. Later that night, once she had gone to bed, Dad found me in the hallway. "We need to be careful," he whispered. I nodded. "I know. But we can't just forget what's happening. We can't pretend it doesn't exist." I looked into his eyes and saw the truth I didn't want to admit. We were in deep. This wasn't something we could just erase. "What do we do?" I asked. He took a breath. "We take it slow. We keep it quiet. And we figure it out together." The next moment, we heard Aunt Claire's voice from behind the guest room door. "You two still up?" We jumped apart like kids caught sneaking out. "Just chatting," Dad called back. "Well, get some rest. Big family breakfast tomorrow." We both murmured goodnight, retreating into our rooms. But sleep didn't come easily. There was something between us now. Something dangerous. Something real. And it was only getting harder to hide. The next few days were a balancing act, one that felt more impossible with every passing hour. Aunt Claire stayed longer than planned, turning what was supposed to be a quiet weekend into a series of noisy meals, late-night card games, and endless stories. To her, everything seemed perfect. To Mom, everything was normal. But for Dad and me, nothing felt the same. Every time we passed each other in the kitchen or shared a glance across the dinner table, I could feel it, the tension, the memory, the temptation. It was always just below the surface, and it was only getting harder to hide. One afternoon, while Claire and Mom were out shopping, I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper. I stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure if I should say anything. Then I took a step closer. "Dad," I said softly, "we need to talk." He looked up, setting the paper aside. "About?" "You know what about," I replied, my voice trembling. He nodded slowly and gestured for me to sit. "I can't stop thinking about it," I admitted, eyes fixed on the floor. "And I don't know what that says about me." He leaned forward. "It says you're human, and you're not alone. I think about it too. What if she suspects something?" "She might," he said quietly, "but she doesn't know anything for sure." We sat there in silence, the weight of our feelings pressing down on both of us. "What if we just explored it?" I said finally, "just to see what it means." His eyes widened. "Lily, just a kiss," I said, almost breathless. "Just one. Then we'll know if it's real or just some summer daydream." He hesitated. Then slowly he nodded. Just as we leaned in, footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Hey, you two okay in here?" Aunt Claire's voice called out, cheerful but close. We jumped apart. "Yeah," I said, my voice higher than usual. "Just talking." She poked her head into the room with a grin. "Well, we're doing movie night again. You better not bail." "Wouldn't dream of it," Dad said quickly. She smiled and walked off. But the moment between us had shattered. Later that night, after the movie ended and everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in my room, trying to catch my breath. I couldn't sleep. I didn't know if I even wanted to anymore. Then came a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find Dad standing there, looking conflicted but determined. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded and let him in. We sat on the edge of the bed, the room dimly lit. The silence between us louder than ever. "I know this is wrong," he said, voice low, "but I can't keep pretending it's not there." "Neither can I replied. "But we can't keep hiding." Claire almost walked in on us. Mom could be next. He took my hand in his. "Then maybe we stop hiding." I froze. "You mean tell her? She deserves to know. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, it can't be a secret forever." My throat felt tight. It could ruin everything. "I know," he said, "but we already crossed the line. Now, we have to decide who we're going to be on the other side of it." I nodded slowly, my heart racing. The next morning, after breakfast, we asked Claire to give us a moment alone with Mom. She looked surprised, but didn't question it. Mom sat on the couch, looking curious. "Is everything okay, Dad?" And I sat across from her. He reached over and took my hand, gently but firmly. "There's something we need to tell you," he said. Mom's smile faltered. "What is it?" I could barely speak. My voice cracked as I whispered, "We have feelings for each other. Not the way we're supposed to." The silence that followed was absolute. Mom stared at us, her eyes wide with disbelief. Then slowly she stood. "I never thought I'd hear this," she said quietly. "From you. From either of you." "I'm sorry," Dad said, standing. "We never meant to hurt you, but it happened." Tears welled in her eyes. "I need time," she said. "Time to think. To breathe." She walked away without another word, leaving us sitting in the living room, our hearts pounding, our lives forever changed. We had done it. The secret was no longer a secret. Now, all we could do was wait and see what came next. Thank you for listening to this episode's story. Don't forget to subscribe and check out more content to discover the many fascinating shades of life.